Welcome back, everybody, to the Catholic Men's Fellowship YouTube channel. We got part 2 with Joseph. We're going to be talking a little bit about his
Morrell,
Joseph
yeah.
Morrell,
Yes.
not Morales.
Yep. Sorry, I didn't bring this in with that intention of being like, hey, it's
No, yeah, it's
Morrell,
perfect though, because
yeah.
now we know how your name is spelled,
yeah,
or how to pronounce it.
Morrell, Morrell, yeah, the French last name.
That's right, French last name.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking specifically about your time in seminary.
Yes, yeah.
How close you came to actually being installed as a priest.
Yep.
That should be pretty interesting. But if you haven't checked out part 1, please do. Joseph goes into a lot of depth about his upcoming as a kid and just being a Catholic man, and really channeling or talking about the avenues on how Catholic men need to be, and really the outlets that we need. Before we do anything, if you are feeling nice, subscribe to the YouTube channel, like the video, share the video, give us a comment, give us any feedback. You can talk negatively about the Catholic Men's Fellowship, but don't do it about Joseph. But yeah, give us a like, give us a subscribe, hit the bell notification to stay up to date when we're posting new videos here on the Catholic Men's Fellowship YouTube channel. Let's go ahead and start in prayer. Since you've been on before, I'll go ahead and I'll do it.
Sounds good.
In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Lord, we just thank you for the opportunity again to just share, to talk about you in this hour that we have with Joseph. We just pray that you truly guide us in this conversation and that you're truly present with us. And we're just thankful that Joseph got here safely to record this episode. And we just thank you for allowing him to return home safely. And we just pray for all of those in need today, for those who are looking for shelter and food and refuge. We just pray that you guide them to that, Lord. And we just pray all this in your holy name, Jesus Christ. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
So, yeah. This is going to be probably the deeper conversation, I would assume.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it does get pretty deep, honestly. Yeah, like you would think that like the journey toward, well, I guess that is what I'm getting into, is the journey like into seminary and all that.
Yeah.
And just during the priesthood. But honestly, it gets like the like discerning out of the seminary, honestly, was like, that's when it's like it goes even deeper. So I'll talk about that.
I'd have to assume so, mainly because it's one thing to discern into priesthood, and that's already like a big step, right?
Oh yeah.
Where it's just like, dang, I'm really, really gonna do this, and then it's one thing to be like, actually, I'm probably not.
Yeah.
So we talked. So last time we talked a little bit about you kind of going in to the seminary, and I think was that a private conversation? I honestly don't remember.
No. I think I mentioned it. I think I remember talking about the priestly discernment program at Steubenville.
Yes, you're right.
So I think I can kind of start kind of there, how I was in that discernment
about your girlfriend
program.
At the time.
Yeah, but then I broke up with her to discern the priesthood and then enroll in that program, and then I stayed in that program till I graduated Steubenville, and then I entered seminary for the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, and entered St. John's Seminary in Camarillo, California, so in Ventura County. So, so that, and like I said, in the last time that I had felt called to the priesthood, I felt kind of like a speck, at least, of a calling to the priesthood from like an early age, right? So, it was just kind of like that seed was planted in me, very early, and it was just throughout my life, it just grew to be more and more like prominent, right? And I remember feeling so much peace to come to LA to join the seminary, and I really had this strong conviction I was called to be a priest in the Archdiocese of LA. And one thing that was, I forget how much I talked about this last time, but basically, I remember thinking, because I remember last time we talked about how is it like to be a Catholic man in kind of this woke city, right?
Yeah.
And because I remember thinking,
and you talked about how it was almost intimidating, like you wanted to be in a more structured city.
Yeah, I told you
that about wanting to be in Philly.
Yeah, like a different, like a Catholic diocese that was kind of more. Well, okay, so I guess we could talk. Yeah, we talk about diocese, but I guess perhaps a one that was like a little friendlier to Catholics. I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
a city that's friendlier to Catholics.
Correct. Yeah,
no, absolutely.
Yeah, but
yeah, understandable. I know we kind of went into it. It's kind of understandable where it's just like you don't want to go to the hard places, but it's just like God sends us exactly, obviously, where you needed to be. And LA was more or less your home at the time, right?
Yeah. So, like I think I mentioned last time, I grew up in Temple City.
Yeah.
So born in Huntington Hospital, Pasadena. Grew up in Temple City, which is like kind of smack dab in the middle of the San Gabriel Valley, part of the greater Los Angeles area. So it's part of LA County. In between, it's like right in the middle of like Pasadena, Arcadia, Rosemead, El Monte, San Gabriel, Alhambra. I'm basically bordering all those cities. So that's where I grew up. So I'm a LA, native in that regard. Both my parents born and raised in LA. I mentioned last time, my dad's Mexican.
Mixed.
Yeah,
mixed,
exactly. My dad's Mexican, my mom's Japanese, but they were born and raised here in
the French
in Los
last
Angeles.
name.
Yeah, the French last name. Yeah,
it's a great story. So check out part 1.
Yeah,
check out part 1.
Oh, totally.
It's just very interesting how you acquired the last name.
Yeah,
how your family acquired the last name. But like you said, so let's just really just dive into it. The official all right. Like we said, we talked about it. You, after that retreat you went on,
yes,
you felt very, very called. So how long after that retreat did you signed up and because I'm assuming there's there's forms you fill out. And
yes, good. Yeah.
This application process.
Correct. Yeah.
So take us through that, and how long was that after this retreat?
Good. Okay. Good question. So the retreat happens. That's when I was like, I gotta take the next step, right? In I guess pursuing the call to the priesthood. At the time, this was like toward the end of this was like Easter, right? My freshman year. This was 2016. And I remember having deep conviction I was called to the priesthood, but I didn't yet feel like ready to commit to a diocese or like a religious community of that sort. I felt like I needed to and that's why that priesthood discernment program was like a perfect program for me, because it was kind of like being in college seminary, but without having to commit to a particular diocese or religious community. And so that's why it was great. I got to stay at Steubenville and could finish my time there. And so I was just like any other student, except I was in this community, this household of brothers, all discerning the priesthood. But all from all parts of the country. So it was a really cool and unique experience. We had commitments like morning prayer, so liturgy of the hours. So that would actually very much look like a seminary schedule. So morning prayer at 7. Let's see, it's set. Well, most of us had to go because basically you had to go to daily mass, right? And so you had the freedom to choose any of the 3 daily masses they offer at Steubenville. That's what's pretty awesome about Steubenville, is that you have 3 daily masses a day.
That is awesome.
Yeah. Or actually, that was when I was there. I was there from 2015 through 19, and they had 3. But I think now they might actually have more.
God willing, they have more.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's how great of a place it is. And so most of us, because of our class schedule and stuff, we had to go to mass at 6:30 in the morning. That was the first mass of the day. 6:30 in the morning. So 6:30 mass, and then
talk about the discipline.
Yeah,
especially
seriously.
Especially as being an 18-year-old away from home, probably for the first time, and having to be up at 6:30 every single morning for daily mass. All honesty, you're at a Catholic college, but who wants to get up that early for
right?
Mass
it's
at
not
that age, and it's not even you should no. Let's just be honest. You're
right.
You here have the liberty and the freedom here at this community college. The last thing you want to do is wake up that early.
Right.
Obviously as you get older, it gets a little different. Where it's I'd rather be up earlier.
Right. It's not typical that of I guess I was 19. That was my sophomore year when I started, so 19 years old at the time, and it's not typical of a
either way,
a
though.
19-year-old,
Like,
yeah.
it's not like you just want to sleep in and.
Oh, totally, yeah.
But yeah, no. So you were going. So you had these obviously these obligations, and then I think we talked a little bit about how like if you couldn't make it, obviously like they knew that in the sense of like if you were in class.
Right, you had to submit your class schedule to our director of the program, and so he would know that you didn't have to be at certain commitments and stuff, and so. But yeah, it was really rigorous actually, but it was really, really good for me, and I'm really glad I did it. And so, but to answer your question though, basically it was I would say by the end of my junior year, I knew that God was calling me to the Archdiocese of LA, and so it was like I think my senior year when I really started the application process. So I actually started it. So right, like I was set to, and I graduated from college from Steubenville in like May of 2019, and so it was the previous summer, the summer of 2018, that I started, preparing, the application process, because it's actually a pretty like rigorous application process for a seminarian. So, I'm trying to just think of there's like multiple series of like interviews you go
that
go
was
through,
literally
right?
my next question is like obviously I would assume there are interviews. It's not like you apply like, hey, you're in tomorrow. All right,
it's really
pack your bags. You show up at our to the seminary tomorrow 6 a.m.
It's pretty and it makes sense that it's rigorous, right? Because
absolutely
it's a really noble calling, noble thing, and they want to make sure that they accept good men to.
The right men.
Exactly. The right men too. So you meet with the vocation director, and you always have to meet with him. Meeting with him first. But I think I did undergo like an official, like interview with him, and actually a couple other like priests who are on the archdiocesan like kind of vocation team, and then I had interviews with like staff at the seminary, and just like multiple series of interviews. And then you also have to do a psychological evaluation.
It's so crazy. That was literally my next question.
Okay, that's crazy. That's funny. Yeah,
I know like with astronauts and like police officers, they have to go under like psychological evaluations.
Yeah,
and so I was just like, I wonder if that's the case for like priests.
Yeah, you do,
because obviously like you want to make sure that they're not coming in with any like mental health issues either.
Exactly.
So it's just like, and I would have to guess. Those are of the same standard as what police and astronauts.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps not the exact same. Well, because I would assume
it
is rigorous though. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because I think police they do like they literally will do like lie detecting tests and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, like they'll do. I think they'll do the actual like
I know what you're talking about. I don't know what it's. I forgot what it's called.
I forgot what it's called too. But the one where there's like the needle and you.
Yeah.
Like
So it's like that's a lie.
Yeah, exactly. But you know what they actually do? So because that is a kind of a lie, a sort of a lie detector test is part of the psychological test. Yeah. So I actually probably should. Yeah, because it should be like it should. What am I trying to say here? Like, if there's anyone out there that thinking about seminary and stuff, they should go into the psychological test. Not really knowing anything about it. So I won't say.
That was also like my next question, where it's just like, do they ask you not to speak on these things that you kind of go through, like if you're to leave?
So,
or do you sign like an NDA or?
Oh, I see. I don't think so. No, it's just, but I'm just saying. I just said that because.
No, I get you. Because then if somebody sees this video, and they're discerning the priesthood, and they go into the priesthood,
right?
It's almost if like they have an edge over the like you can start prepping for a test.
Exactly. So I don't exactly, but I'll just say that it's a good rigorous test to which they just ask honest questions, about you, like about just your mental health, basically your psychological health and things like that, and then they and you have to. You have to tell the truth. You have to respond honestly to them, and but it's good that they do all of that.
No, absolutely, and I would assume there's different I guess you can say like like, yeah, there's a yes and no like question portion, I would assume, but then the questionnaire portion, but then there's also like different, I guess, psychological tests that they do as well.
Yeah, yeah. I don't want to make it sound like it's a very like, what's the word? Respectful, like
yeah, it's not like
it's no science experiment or anything, It's like
the what is it? The interrogation line.
Right? No, yeah, no.
You're there sitting with Bishop Barron and Father Mike Schmidt.
No. And in fact, they it's a professional, like typically they have like a professional psychologist that's not like they're connected with the the seminary, but they're not like part of the staff of the seminary or anything.
They're not a priest.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like a professional psychologist doing this. That's officiating. Officiate the test. But anyway, so you do that, and then basically just like more interviews. So go ahead. Yeah. Go ahead.
After you finish up those tests, how long before like you received your results?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in my case, I was kind of a unique case in that. Well, maybe not too unique because I'm sure this happens to other guys too, but like because I was going to college out of state, right? So like I started my application summer of 2018 because I was home for the summer, before my senior year, and then I started the application. I may have done like a few interviews with like with the vocation director, team priest, and then like, but then I had to go to school and back to Ohio, in Ohio, like in August until December, and then during my Christmas break, I think I did the psychological evaluation and did some other interviews. But then, like in between these interviews, they're like reviewing like the results of these tests and interviews and whatnot. And then what happens is like, I guess after you do all of the things and actually, I'm just remembering now, it involves like the application itself, like the written part is also kind of rigorous. Like you have to write like, I forgot how many pages it was, but it was like multiple pages of kind of like your life story, like your journey with God and things like that, which is good, because they want to know that you're like a man of God. You write down like all the experience you've had, like in ministry, or if you've done mission work before, or whatever. They want to know that you're like a man who's kind of the mind of the church and is practicing the faith, right?
And that makes sense. And I would assume, like you say, multiple pages, they want this in detail and in depth as possible, which would make sense. It's because like it's an application, it's just like, and this is you're there. I mean, essentially what you're doing is signing up and giving your life 100% to this,
right?
To the seminary, to the church, And so obviously it's not easy. It's not easy to do that. And one of the questions I also had is, out of the men that you were discerning with you in college, and then
I see,
like joined the seminary or applied for the seminary and got essentially like, or applied, did any get denied?
Oh, that's a good question.
Because I know that sometimes happens. Where they'll be like, oh, well,
get denied.
This isn't for you, or they joined and they're like,
Yeah, I did see that actually. Yeah, I did see that among like guys that I knew, from college and stuff. But it was like, for the most part, it was like there were like good, reasons, for it, and the guys that I knew were very accepting of that, because it's basically like because it may have to do with like a psychological thing, or it could have to do with like a discernment thing, where like the community, after getting to know you throughout these series of interviews, they determine, I think, our community or our, diocese or whatever, or the priesthood may not be the right fit for you,
Yeah.
So that's the thing. The discernment process it's not just like yourself discerning, it's also the church, also has to discern with you, as well, and so, that's important to remember.
That makes sense, because it's it's a two-way street in that sense, where it's just like, obviously like when priests hear, oh yeah, I'm interested in the priesthood, obviously they light up and like, oh, are you? And like, obviously they're trying to sell you.
Sure.
It's like sell you a car, basically, but but then, obviously it gets to the point where it's just like, well, is this what's right for you? you know?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so it's like, so it's an equal thing where it's just like, yeah, the seminary and the archdiocese have to be like, yeah, we want to bring this guy into the seminary.
Right.
Whereas just like, no, he's clearly called for something else.
Yes.
So.
Exactly. So, because not everyone's called, to the priesthood. Well, you may be really talented at, public speaking or at counseling and listening to people, or, maybe you're really intelligent, so you would be really good at studying theology, philosophy, whatever. Like, you could have the talents, the gifts, and you could even have, like, maybe even a desire for that stuff, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're called, and that's why the discernment process is so important, and it's okay that it's, it has the level of rigor that it does,
Okay. So at this point, when all this is going and you're going through the application process, you said it's your junior year.
My senior year, actually.
Okay,
yeah.
So senior year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Senior year.
So is the first year in the seminary in senior year, or are you?
So basically the application process was like in process
throughout your senior year.
Throughout my senior year, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was during like the summer before, and basically my Christmas break during my senior year, where I got to in person do those things I needed to do in person, and then the application, they had to review it and stuff. And then by like, I think it was like March or April of like my senior year. So March or April of like 2019, when I think I got the phone call, from my vocation director saying, congratulations, Joseph, you've been accepted to seminary. And it was awesome, so I knew. So it's nice, right? Like when you're leading up to graduating college, it's like it's nice to know, what's coming up, So. So yeah, it was nice that like March, April, it was like bam, I got the call, and like, okay, great, it was a very good feeling, and it was cool. I got to share with my friends there in college and whatnot, and so it was people very supportive, and that's the kind of the nice thing that's unique about the university I went to, Steubenville, in that because it's very Catholic. It's like you announce something like that. Oh yeah, I'm going to seminary. It's like people are very, they're very encouraging and supportive, So
because it's like it's more natural to hear that in like
you're right.
Like say if like I went to work tomorrow, I was like, hey, I'm joining the seminary, guys. They're gonna be like, what?
Yeah, right.
Like no,
they're not even gonna know what that is.
Like, what's that?
Yeah, the cemetery. What do you mean the cemetery? You're gonna work at the cemetery? That's what some people say. Yeah.
That seems like a dark joke.
Oh, well, I didn't mean it that way, but that could easily turn into
no,
that.
really. Yeah. Maybe because I go there. Like that's where my mind naturally like, dang, that's dark.
Yeah.
No, two questions. Two questions.
Please, yeah.
How did you celebrate?
Celebrate.
There's no way you didn't.
Actually, that's a really good. Okay, go ahead.
Three questions. One, the second question is a follow up to the first question. And the third one's kind of a deeper question. So the second question is, how did your parents take it when you told them?
Oh, okay, yeah.
So, how'd you celebrate, and how'd your parents take it?
Good question. So, to be honest, I don't remember exactly how I celebrate. I'm sure I went out with my priesthood program brothers, and I'm sure I like went out to eat or something. That's probably what I did.
Yeah.
I don't remember. I just remember being like really happy and like relieved, relieved meaning like, okay, good, like this, I was accepted, and but good question. I'm sorry. I wish I had a better memory of that.
That's okay.
But
maybe you just can't tell us a story because that's how.
Oh, no, I wouldn't lie to you. I
spent all night in adoration.
Oh, oh man, no, but yeah. So, but my parents, they were very supportive. I think I forgot I mentioned this last time, but like basically, I told them, after the retreat that my freshman year that I went on. Like, hey, I called them and I was like, hey, I believe God's calling me to the priesthood, and I think I have to take steps to move forward in that direction. And it was funny, both my parents were like, oh yeah, like they were both happy, they're both devout Catholics, and both of them were like, yeah, we definitely could see it in you, like literally, like they saw that, they could see, I guess, that vocation in me, throughout my childhood and like.
Yeah.
But what I really appreciate about my parents is that they intentionally never like pushed that on me. They never, because they wanted it to be like my free decision,
Yeah.
So even though they saw that in me and they liked the idea of like, their son becoming a priest or whatever, they never, pushed on me. So I'm really grateful to them for that. Yeah.
I don't know if I shared this in the last video. I think I've shared it with you outside of like an interview or a podcast, but my mom growing up would say, "Oh, like, I pray for you to be a priest." And apparently as a kid, I was just like, "Oh yeah, cool." Like I want to be a priest. But I feel like at a young age, like kids want to go into those vocations.
Yeah. They're they're definitely more open to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause I remember like, at our Easter Mass, the Sunday Easter Mass, not the vigil. We had a little girl dressed up as a nun. She was dressed up as, what are the nuns that wear the light baby blue? Do you know what those are called?
Oh, the Trinitarian sisters.
I think so. Yeah.
Here in I think they're like in Baldwin Park or something.
I just know it was
West
baby
Covina
blue.
or something. Yeah.
She might, or you know what? She might have been dressed like the Blessed Mother.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah.
Well, it can easily a kid can be easily mistaken dressed as a two. But point is, she's like, oh, but she was saying like, I want to be a nun. I want to be a nun.
Yeah.
So I feel like at a young age that was, and I remember like as I got older into like middle school, high school, she's like, I used to pray that I pray that you be a priest, and I'm just like, I was like, you better stop. Like I don't want. I don't want to do it. Like, because obviously too, like the Father's will. It's the Father's will.
Yes, yeah.
So, and even as I came back to the church, I was just like, no, don't, like, she would say it, like, well, maybe you're called to be a priest. Like, don't say that, I know, that was very scary.
It is scary, yeah.
Now that I'm practicing, I like to say I'm devout, I'm just like, that seems very appealing. Like, that lifestyle seems very appealing, where I'm just like, well, maybe I do want to be, like, a priest. Like, like, I think that's, like, one of the conscious decisions. I think, like, too, like, my two parish priests are like two big reasons why I can be like, yeah, they were big, like, they were big influences and feel like these, like, I don't want to say father figure because they are fathers, but they were these two like inspirational.
You could say that,
like two important people where I would say like, I discern priesthood because of them, because of the impacts they made on my life. Where it's just like, I would like, you're a reason I want to be a priest. Because I see how good of a priest they are, and I'm just like, dang, like, you make me want to be a priest. Like, where it's that sense. Where I think, like, growing up, I guess there was, like, that whole, I guess, obviously, priests were super older than me as a
right,
kid.
Yeah,
but
totally.
now that they're closer in age, because I've grown up, it's like, oh, well, it's just like, that's kind of cool.
Yeah,
whereas
exactly.
It's like, and I have a buddy in the seminary, the Orange Seminary, and I remember like him and I were talking like I met him in the beginning of the year, but like he was just saying like it's just like I tell him, it's just like I like the idea of like having like like almost like this band of like brothers, where it's just like when you're in like a seminary, it's like like the fraternity like appeal is one of like he's like that was like for me as well. Where it's just like being in that, like having, it's just a bunch of, we're all just, men who love God, and, working, striving to want to be good priests. And so, like, I know that's one thing, like, with that, I know it's like, I want like just like, I guess, because there's nothing cooler than being just a man of God.
Sure.
About man of God. But you can have that inside the church and outside the church. Because even like the young adult ministry, like I feel like now the men are really like, God has brought some good devout men to the young adult ministry where it's like, we're all in our faith. We're all practicing.
You mean inside the seminary or outside the seminary?
Yeah, you can have it both. So you can have that inside and outside of.
Correct. Like, and I think right, and I think it's like we all need fellowship, and I think it is and important to have specifically like men's fellowship too. To kind of bond over our faith, and it's just it's unfortunate that like. Well, what I would say actually is, we have to be very intentional today about like forming that 100%. Community, right? Yeah,
100%. I was just having a conversation on this where it's just like, it's hard also to find that like authenticness, that like genuineness of someone. Yeah, where it's just like, oh yeah, like this is somebody I want. I don't want to say not necessarily like don't want around. That's the wrong way to put it, but necessarily like, well, how close do we bring them to the people in our ministry? Because I don't know. I'm trying to figure out what like their intentions are. Because
Sure,
you know, like
totally.
especially like I think being like a young adult minister, I think of like the wow being in the safe place of others before myself for sure. Whereas like I want to make sure they're coming in and feeling like this is a safe space, and those who aren't truly here for the Lord like aren't here. You know, I mean, my biggest thing is like come as you are, just don't stay as you are. You know,
I like
it's
that.
just, like,
That's good.
You know, like
That's
that's
good.
how like that's what I say. It's just like when we had the barbecue.
Yeah.
We were not expecting close to 40 people.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's
we
right.
were expecting
Wow.
honestly like 10 to 15, and then there are people like within like that Friday and Saturday, like, can we still come? Can we sign up for something? Can we sign up for something?
Yeah, that's great.
And Gene invited Gene invited a bunch of friends, and you know, so it was just like there was close to like 40 people there, and I was just like, dang, like, you know, it's just like, hey, there's room for all of us, you know. It's just like,
yeah.
I don't know. And it was funny because I bought. We expected about probably 15 to 20, I would say, and so I bought an extra like 10 burgers, you know, in case anybody wants like seconds or something like that. And then by the time we had it, it was going to be like one burger per person. By the time like people actually like showed up, and I knew how many people, I was like, we have enough food. Like, we have enough food.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, and this is completely striving off of the off of course of conversation.
Oh, you're good. You're good. Yeah.
But it was just like, you know, it kind of reminded me of like the two loaves and the 5 fish, or is it I forget.
5 loaves, five loaves, 2 fish.
Yeah, I always get it mixed up all the time.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
But it reminded me of that. Where it's like, do we have enough? You know?
Oh yeah.
We had more than I had lunch every day of the week, like with leftovers, and we had a bunch of people here. You know, it was crazy. Point is, back to the seminarian. But yeah, you know, it's just like that fraternity feel of what like the seminarian or the seminary can offer.
Correct.
You know, I think could be very appealing, especially when like men in today's age. We talked about how it's just like I feel like we're very pushed and like forced into like this exiled like feeling where we're kind of forced to be on our own. There's not a lot of outlets for us, and it's clear that like society, the secular society, does not care about men's mental health and the well-being of men.
Correct. Yeah.
So it's just like there's this forced into isolation that I feel like we're forced into. So I feel like men now who enter seminary may just are looking for those brothers. You know.
Yeah, and I think it's a huge blessing in seminary that because that is just a natural need, human need that, you know, that we as men have to have that fellowship. And it is nice that that's just built into life at seminary, right? So I knew in April of my senior year, that was 2019, I was accepted, and then, you know, parents, you know, very supportive, you know, and then I started seminary that following, you know, academic year, basically, you know. So I started in 2019, and so throughout my time at seminary, I was, it was great. I mean, like we were talking about, like the fellowship was just awesome. Like what was cool, because I remember last time, you know, we talk about like LA or California or whatever, but what's really beautiful is like when you go to seminary, you see just these really great, like, you know, men, mostly young men, you know, like from the area, you know, from California who, you know, care about the faith, you know, who want to serve God. And, you don't see that, like, you're not used to seeing that necessarily, like, on a day-to-day basis, like, here in California. But then you go to seminary, and it's like, oh, wow, like, here's a collection of just, like, all these great guys, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a huge blessing.
It was funny. I was at another young adult ministry, and one of the girls is like, "Where are all the good men at?"
Oh,
did I already tell this? Joke?
I don't think you told me this. I
might have said this joke on the last video. I don't know. But point is, I responded. I was like, "They're on the seminary." You know?
A lot of people. Yeah. I've heard that a lot.
You know, like
a lot.
But, I had a follow up. My third question.
Yeah.
So, do you think at all discernment and I know you said you had the call, but do you think like subconsciously joining the seminary and like the pursuit of the seminary and like taking it serious was because of like any like, I guess you can say like anxious, like anxiety or like fear of like not knowing what comes after college and like continuously needing that structure.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that can play like a subconscious factor into going into the seminary.
Dang, that is excellent. That's a really good question.
The reason I say that is because they say men who join the armed forces right out of high school don't know what they want to do with their lives.
Right.
And not saying, which is the complete opposite if you're joining the seminary, because it's just like you're signing up for your career at that point.
Right.
You know, whereas like, you know, men and women go into the army for 4 years and, you know.
So that was such a good question. So, and I'll get more in depth to that in just a moment. But kind of short answer is that was like not like subconscious. I don't know if subconscious is the right word, but like the sense that you're talking about, like absolutely, like for me personally, right, where yes, my primary intention is I'm trying to follow God's will. You know, I believe God's calling me to this.
Yeah.
But honestly, though, there was also this like there's a sense of like, wow, I'm happy. You know, like I like this part of my life is kind of figured out. You know, like I don't have to, you know, worry as much about like, you know, what career path to take or whatever. I don't have to like deal with all of that. And so I think again, because I primarily was like, follow God's will, I think it was more like a perk kind of, you know, like it was more like a nice byproduct of, you know, following God's will. However, but I'm going to dive deeper into that because this gets really important. It was a really good question. So, but like, does that make sense? Like,
no, absolutely. Okay, 100%. Because like the times I have like felt like, because I feel the call to both, like, and I feel like that, like that is like a common thing for men. Well,
to have that draw, like
the attraction to both married life and also the priest the vocation of priesthood. You know, where it's just I feel like you can definitely have both of those appeals. You know, you know, so where was I going? I just completely blanked.
We were talking about like, you know, subconsciously,
So being fully happy. So I remember one of the first times I had the call up priest was like, okay, maybe I need to stop like kind of ignoring it and say like, no, absolutely not. And she'd be like, you know what? Let me hear what the pitch is on why I should be a priest outside of, you know, obviously you're giving your life to the Lord, you know. And so one of the first times I felt that where I was like, oh, maybe I should just listen. Maybe I should just see if this is for me. There was this like just sense of just like, I don't want to say like security, but that's how it almost felt like security. It was so euphoric.
Yes.
It was so euphoric. And I was like, wow, like I'm at peace, like in like this moment, having this thought, like there's nothing other than the Lord that can ruin this moment. And not saying the Lord would, you know, but there's nothing that will ruin this moment. Why I feel like this peace and this calmness. And I think that was part of like, okay, like, you know, the first of just like, you know, maybe have to watch God. So I don't know if I've shared this. I've watched videos on why to be a priest.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and they've all made sense. And then I've watched videos why not to be a priest, and they've all made sense. The only thing, the best advice I feel like I got out of any of these videos was you can't discern from your bedroom on your bed.
I like that.
And so that was just like, well, that's exactly what I'm doing, you know? So I guess like, I think like if you're a devout Catholic man, I think you're like, if you haven't already like taken the steps, you're constantly in a discernment process, like, where's God calling me? So like, I always say like, you know, it's like, oh, well, do you think like when I get asked, like, do you think of being like a priest? I was like, well, I feel like I'm like actively discerning that. I'm actively like trying to figure that out, but I'm not doing like the steps of just like going to, you know, like to that.
And I can, maybe I can touch on that a little bit, but because discernment as a whole, like, I'll get back to that. Just my thoughts on just discernment as something that we as, you know, Catholics, as Christians, we do. But I'll just get to the, because I'll go ahead.
Sorry. I don't know how long we've been talking, but we've been talking for a good minute.
Yeah, we have, yeah. So I do want to get to
no, yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the part where it's just like, okay, first year in the seminary, what was that like? And then go immediately into like, I guess the night or the day.
Sure, yeah.
Just like, yeah, this is not, I'm not continuing.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
Okay, good. So first year, it was good. Highs and lows, I would say. I think there's like something really. I can't say too much honestly, but like when it's just different when you're like inside, you know, if that makes sense. When like you're inside the church now in that sense, and like you kind of see things. You see the church like all the great things, but you also see like its brokenness too, you know, and that a lot of that was kind of like shocking to me. It was like, oh, whoa, you know, like seeing that just made me think, okay, you know, the church needs a lot of prayers, and you know, we need to do a lot of work here in the church, you know, but I think like that's, you know, just speaking of discernment, that was always for me a source of not like discouragement, but source of like encouragement. Actually, it's like, you know, the more I see that, it's like the brokenness of the church or the world or whatever. It's like the more I have this desire, you know, to serve, you know, and to
get to work,
I guess. Yeah. So yeah, I guess first year was like that, but I, you know, made good friends, and whom I'm still, you know, close with today. And yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, so basically, and just a little like overview what seminary is like is, it's like kind of like being at university. Like you live there at the seminary, you take classes during the day, and your day is basically like, it's filled with, there's like prayer, like times, like kind of beginning, middle, end of day where you're praying, whether it's liturgy hours or mass, you know, and then, and, you know, kind of in between those times, you have class, and you have free time, you know, like in the afternoon, and during that time, you can go to the gym. You know, the seminary has its own gym, you know, its own pool and stuff, so you can use those facilities, you know, for exercise, you know, or, you know, oftentimes like guys get together. It's like Thursday was like the soccer day, let's say, you know, Monday was like the basketball day, so guys would like get together and play. So really good like fraternity, you know, fellowship and in that regard. So a little bit glimpse into like what seminary is, you know, is like, so I was, throughout my time in seminary, I would say, like, I did feel very confirmed in my vocation, you know, to the priesthood, because of like, the desire to like serve the community, and like whether it was me getting involved in my home parish or my internship parish. So you know, we do an internship year in between a second and third theology. So basically, quick like. Where I was in formation was, so when I went to Steubenville and I was in that discernment program, I studied philosophy, and so I graduated with a bachelor's in philosophy and minor in theology. And so because of that, when they looked at my record, I was accepted to go straight into theology, right? So because to be a priest, you need to study both philosophy and theology. Yeah. And so I got to skip the philosophy portion of seminary, basically, and just go straight into theology. Okay. Yeah.
So you went in with basically less to do?
Correct. Yeah. So
does that make your time in the would that have made your time in the seminary shorter?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I can't give like an absolute number as like how long it takes like to become a priest, but right now I think it takes between 8 and 9 years.
Yeah. Right? I've heard around that, because if you're studying both philosophy and theology, those are two different degrees in their own.
Correct.
That lines up. Whereas 8 to 9 years, I would assume it's a bachelor, or it's an AA, or it's bachelor's.
So for philosophy, it's there's a whole like,
that would be the bachelor's, huh?
Correct. Yeah.
And
correct.
Then the theology would be the master's.
Correct. Yeah. At least that's how I would say most seminary in the United States, that's how it's modeled, is like philosophy would be like your bachelor's, and then theology would be like kind of master's. By default, you in theology, you earn what's called an MDiv degree, Master's in Divinity, which is like a ministry degree.
Oh, okay.
And even like Protestant groups, they acknowledge like the MDiv, Master's in Divinity, but
that's that's a self-created master's degree?
Yeah, like it's
by
not
the church.
Correct. Yeah. Well,
because I'm assuming you couldn't get that like if you went to like a
secular,
like a postgrad or a graduate school. Like,
correct. It's like a ministry, degree that is offered by, well, like I guess seminaries, but there's also Christian like universities that also offer that too, and it's recognized by like different Christian or Catholic like organizations, or like if you were to, let's say if you wanted to be a director of religious education or a youth minister, not that it's required, but if you had a master's in divinity, which is a ministry degree, then that could look good on your application. But so by default we studied we had an MDiv, but there was the option also to get, in addition to that, a Master's of Arts, which is the recognized MA is recognized by everyone.
So
in theology.
Given that you went in at with less to do in the seminary, with less curricular or coursework, you didn't have the MDiv going in, right?
No, I didn't. So I had a BA in philosophy going in, and then I was working toward the MDiv, and then and so actually I only had, like, when I entered seminary, I only had 5 years to do. So I had 5 years. So I had to do my so theology 1, theology 2, internship, right, and then theology 3, and that would have, end of theology 3 would have been diaconate, ordination, and then theology 4, and then priesthood ordination. So so I did all the way to here, and then I to theology 3. So I did my internship year, St. John Vianney Church of the Heights, and that was great. It was awesome.
That church. It's a nice church.
Okay, so you've been there. You know that church. Yeah. So so I did ministry there. It's cool because you get to get like kind of a glimpse or a rectory life and life at a parish and whatnot, and then I went back to the seminary to finish to do theology, and then it was in March. It was in the spring of my theology 3 year that I discerned. I made the discernment to delay ordination. So how that story went was I was like, up until that point, it was crazy. Like up until that point, I was just very convinced, of
seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, really, to become a
priest. Oh yeah, exactly. And here's the thing, like you get ordained a deacon before you get ordained a priest. But the thing is, when you're ordained a deacon, that's what I would call that's like the point of no return. Yeah. Once you're ordained a deacon, then you've already made your promises to celibacy and all that. Basically, ordination diaconate is like when you've committed, like I am moving forward to the priesthood, and I've committed for the rest of my life, to. So right before it
is almost like it's last chance.
Yeah. So that theology 3 year, like I talked about, that's when you gotta like really make the decision and know, this is my calling. And so again, I kind of like the way I would put it is like I took it for granted. Like I took. Meaning, I just I was just like, yeah, I know this is my calling, and I didn't really question it. I was just I felt ready to be ordained a deacon. But then, so I was going to be ordained a deacon May of 2023.
So a year ago.
Literally yes. Yeah. That's crazy to think about. Yeah. So May of 2023, and then in March, right? I remember, I'll never forget the day. It was March 14th, and
wow,
it was a Tuesday, and the rector. So the rector is the priest that's in charge of the whole seminary, right? So the rector of the seminary, great, awesome priest, Father Marco is his name. So anyway, but he comes into the or he assembles my class, and my class is huge, like my class, the LA guys plus. Because how the seminary works is it's like I say it's like veterinary school. Like there aren't all that many like veterinary schools like in the United States. There's like only like a dozen or 2 dozen or whatever, and so you can't like go. Not everyone can go locally to the veterinary school. You have to like travel, and so that's kind of how seminary works. So
That makes sense.
the Archdiocese of LA has their own seminary, which is in Camarillo, but we have neighboring dioceses like Orange, San Bernardino, Fresno that send their guys to St. John's in Camarillo. And so, but anyway, all of us combined, we were like the LA class. I think there were 12 of us, and then with the other dioceses, we were like 25 guys or something like that. So that was a huge class, for us. And so, anyway, he assembles us, the rector, and then he says he's going to give us what's called the petition form. So in order to be ordained, this is part of canon law. Actually, you need to write a letter to the bishop. Stating basically your consent, like your will to be ordained. Yeah. Right? Because it needs to be like proof that you're basically doing this of your own volition, your own freedom. And so basically there's this form that you handwrite, to this that you do. And so before the rector gave us the form, he gave us this spiel, this really profound like speech, like 10-minute thing, and he was like, guys, what's most important is that you are truly free when you write this petition. When you write this petition and you choose ordination, you are truly free in doing so. Like, you're not doing it because anyone expects you to, because your family or friends are applying pressure to you or whatever. It's like it really is your own free decision. And that that struck me. It was like Holy Spirit moment, struck my heart, and it was like, oh shoot, like have I actually like asked myself that question? Because I haven't before. And I remember taking that petition form after that meeting, and then going to the Blessed Sacrament Chapel and like just praying there for like 2 hours, and just like I was just like praying like, gosh, like, because it felt like the Lord like tested me, because he like put on my heart. It's like he was saying, so what if I asked you, to delay ordination, to not write this petition? Yeah. And like all this fear started coming up. It's like all this fear of like, oh, but what would people say? What would my friends, my family, parishioners, people from internship, what priest friends, whatever,
the outside world
my class,
into your feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it was like if I don't fulfill these other people's expectations, like what are they gonna say? What are they gonna think? This is all this fear, dude, of just like, and I was like, as a result, it made me think, oh, but I want to write the petition, but it's like not. There isn't this. It's not this completely pure intention, though. It's like out of this fear, right?
Did you think any of it was perhaps like the attack from the evil one?
So good question. So maybe I suspected that like a little bit, but I think you can tell when it's.
No, that's true.
When it's God, and you can tell when it's so. Yeah. And the reason, because I wouldn't describe this as like a doubt. Like it wasn't, because that comes from the evil one. Like doubt, confusion, and like, but this wasn't that. It was like an insight. It was like a
seeing the reality of things.
Exactly. Yeah. There was kind of this. There was like this invitation kind of to like consider this thing.
You feel like God burst at your bubble in that moment?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, the way I describe it to people is it felt like I was on this conveyor belt, right? Like on the way like to ordination, because I had taken, like I said, I had taken for granted that, I was called to the priesthood.
Going through this process.
So I was just like, oh yeah, I'm called to the priesthood, conveyor belt, ready to, be ordained, but then that moment, that rector's his speech was like, the way I describe it is it felt like I was knocked off the conveyor belt. It was like, oh shoot, because now I'm not just on this manufacturing line. Like I actually need to make a decision. This is my choice to get ordained, And so when I was confronted with that choice, and I considered like, oh, but if God asked me to leave, like what I think, all this fear, And so because of that, and I remember it was Tuesday, March 14th, and it was for that Friday, March 17th, when the petition was due. That was St. Patrick's Day, and so we just had like 3 days to kind of like pray about
that
this
it's
and stuff.
due? It was due on St. Patrick's Day.
No, that was
No?
just
It's
coincidence.
oh,
That was
okay.
just coincidence.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like providence, I would say, in the sense
Yeah.
that like it's significant to me now, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah,
In the moment,
Yeah.
it just so happened to land on St. Patrick's Day and when it was due.
correct, yeah.
Okay.
And so I met with my spiritual director, and just like it was just very clear, even though it was so hard. It was the hardest decision in my life, and it was there was so much like fear. But once I like I made the decision, and I took the step of delaying ordination, you know, because I knew I didn't have the freedom, like if you know the freedom to the free choice to do it.
Yeah.
There was so much freedom and peace that came from that, you know.
Yeah.
And to know that I don't have to be a slave to, you know, other people's, you know, expectations of me and what they, and a slave to like fear of what other people are going to say, what people don't think, you know, what other people are going to think and whatnot. And so, it was just very like freeing to say that, you know, okay, like I'm not ready, you know, I'm going to delay ordination. And I remember like having so much fear of like, how are people going to react? And I think I tend to be the kind of person that catastrophizes things in my head.
Mm-hmm.
But like, the response I got like from, you know, the priests and everything, my formators, was just so good, so fatherly, you know, like the rector. I remember I went into his on that Friday, St. Patrick's Day, at like 4 p.m. I scheduled a meeting with him, and I go in and I show him the petition on his desk, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't sign it, you know. And he was like, well, like, he was like really surprised. He didn't expect that.
Yeah.
And I was worried that he was gonna react kind of like, what, like, you know, you've come all this way, and like now
what are you doing?
Yeah,
like,
what are you doing now? You decide not to. No, dude, he was so like father and so just like, he was like proud. He was proud that I made that honest discernment, and I was, because he understands, you know, he understood that like that's tough, you know, because you are kind of under this pressure. So to make the decision to not move forward is huge. So he was just so good. And same thing with my vocation director, you know, just so like when I explained that to him, he was just like, yeah, just proud that I made that discernment and that honest discernment to delay. And then, you know, I would say it was like a week or two later where I discerned, because at the time, at first it was like, I know I'm supposed to delay, but am I supposed to like leave seminary completely? Do I just delay? Because I had the option to just like delay and get ordained later, you know.
Yeah.
But
which I think is like the I would assume not necessarily like the happy medium for the seminary,
sure,
but in the sense where it's just like they're not entirely like removing you from the seminary. Like
correct,
you know, like it's, I don't want to say like happy medium. That's probably the wrong choice of words, but in the sense where it's just like, yeah, you're just delaying because you're still not necessarily sure.
Yeah.
But I guess in that sense, it's just like what happens in the case where you are done with all your coursework in terms of like the studies? Do you just do would you just do an extra year at
good question,
rectory life?
Yeah, good question. If I were to do that, I suppose it depended on how much time I would want to delay. Like there's I guess there could have been the option of like my classmates get ordained in May, deacons in May, and then like let's say they would just delay me till like December of that year. I get ordained a deacon in December, and then I get ordained priest with them all like in, you know, the following like summer, you know.
Oh, okay.
That makes sense. So
only your ordination as a deacon would be delayed.
Correct.
And you still being a priest would still be
correct. Like that probably would have been an option for me
Okay.
if I had chosen to simply delay and not leave seminary. But it was, in my prayer and discernment, it was clear that the right choice was to actually like withdraw complete from the seminary. And the reason for that is because, well, the freedom issue, right? Because it's like I didn't, like, I needed to be in a position where I'm not just in this place of I'm just expected to do it, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not just like going back on the conveyor belt, you know.
Yeah.
But also identity, right? And I may have, I forget if I talked a little bit about this before, but basically like it was clear that I had put all of my identity in being a seminarian and becoming a priest, as if like that's just like all who I was, and there was nothing outside of that, But God was trying to show me, no, actually, like you have a more fundamental identity, which is that you're a beloved son of the Father, and like it's not until you fully embrace that identity that you can take on the identity of a priest or of a married man, or just whatever state of life vocation, right? You have to really like,
you're just not a vessel and a tool.
Exactly. Yeah. And so and so that was huge too, right? Like the just the profound like realization of God loves me. He doesn't just see me as like a potential sacrament dispenser, just to like save souls or whatever. It's like
such an interesting way to put it.
Yeah.
But I can get why.
Yeah.
Whereas just like, there are priests who fall into just the routine of being a priest.
Right.
And, it's just like, it's more of just like they're serving because it's ultimately their job, their career, but you can tell that they don't want to be this anymore. But, because like, I mean, I guess, I don't know if you would know this, but it's just like, what happens to the priests who get ordained priests and then leave priesthood?
Oh,
like, are you in the sense like removed completely of the sacraments where you cannot like receive?
Yeah, that's a good.
Do you?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. So, yeah, with priests that do that, you leaving the priesthood means like so. The thing is, once you're ordained a priest, like once the bishop lays his hands on you and ordains you a priest, you'll always have that what's called an indelible mark on your soul. Like you'll always have like the mark of a priest on your soul. So like in heaven, actually in hell, purgatory, heaven, wherever, you will be able to identify like who the priests are. Even the priests that like left the priesthood,
Wow.
that'll always be there. But a priest can leave basically like I guess you could say like the office or like role of the priesthood, in that he can. I mean, for some priests, right, it happens like out of scandal. It's not their choice.
Yeah.
They're told to do that. But some priests, they really just, for whatever reason, whether it's a commitment issue or it's just they really, really honestly can't, they made a mistake. So, and that's there's a lot of nuance to that, but let's just say, a mistake. What would happen is the bishop removes what's called their faculties, because basically a priest can only like do what he does publicly, like with by the power of the bishop. Like the bishop basically gives him
the authority
to do that, and so the priest's faculties are removed, so he can no longer hear confessions or celebrate mass publicly, and so so that could happen. And in addition to that, a priest can also be what's called laicized, which means like basically they no longer are required to be celibate, and they can be married. And so
really, so you can become a priest, leave the priesthood, and then go get married in the Catholic Church?
It's possible. Yes, it's possible, but it's never something that you ought to. It's never something you should like.
No, I get what you mean.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
Yeah.
Because that's probably something that probably
should get too excited there.
Yeah, no.
Sorry.
No, that's oh my gosh, that's so horrible.
No, I'm sorry. I'm joking. Yeah.
No, I guess because like my biggest thing is like because you hear all these scandals like there was that priest who wanted to a couple of years ago, I forgot, where it's just like he wanted to marry and he couldn't, and it was a layman, and he ended up leaving the Catholic Church and then starting his own church.
Right.
But then we hear so many like versions of it where it's just like I think it was where it's just like I know there's traces of like Martin Luther who wanted to marry a nun and couldn't marry a nun. And
right.
So that's how the Protestant Reformation ended up coming to be.
Right.
So it's just like I know. Sorry,
I think
I guess that's a shocker because like me personally, this is just like my own opinion. Is just like once you're ordained into priesthood, like you should not be allowed to get married if you leave the priesthood. Like regardless.
And Go ahead.
Like
Yeah,
regardless as if like you are laicized and like returned basically
right
to that,
and
you know.
right, and that's I think that's a great point. And what I would say is to be honest, I don't know the like what's the word? I don't know the commonality of like laicization and like how often that happens or whatnot. So because it's definitely not like, I mean, no, like when you become a priest, it's like that's a very grave and serious thing.
No,
you know?
yeah,
Like,
absolutely, and that's why it should be, and that's what that is why like even from, because it's like men need logic behind a lot of things. Whereas it's like that's why logically the Catholic Church is the one true church of Jesus, because it's the only church that asks of its leaders, in the sense of like who's the head of like the individual churches, to fully give their lives to God.
Whereas
like if you look at like the Protestant church, all of them have wives,
right?
Or eventually you find a wife,
right?
And even in the Orthodox Church, you can find a wife. You can be married as a priest, and like, sure, obviously the Orthodox Church has sacraments as majority of what we have.
Yeah.
The few differences are the one things that are like truly just stand out as like a sore thumb to me, as you would say. Whereas just like, I don't think men who are leading churches should be married, you know, because it's just like you look at the apostles where they completely left up their lives and went into the areas of the world to spread the gospels, and how even like St. Paul said, none of us should be married.
I mean,
it's just like,
So
I look at it like that way, where it's just like, like, you know, it's just like priests, regardless whether you get ordained. Well, if you get ordained, you should not be able to,
what I would say is it's kind of like, it's hard to make this comparison, but it's like marriage, for example, that's intended to be for life. Like marriage is as a sacrament is like no one can, the church doesn't have the power, like a marriage that's like where the vows are exchanged and it's consummated. The church does not have, the Catholic Church does not have the authority to dissolve, you know, a marriage. Obviously there's like, you know, we have what's called like a declaration of annulment, which is not a divorce, and that's not like that's not a separation. That's just declaring that the marriage was invalid from the beginning because of, you know, circumstances that you know they didn't fulfill the you know so
no, absolutely
but it's kind of like that, where it's like you don't, marriage is also a very noble and grave and, you know, thing that is not to be like, you should never go in. You should go in like with the intention like this is for life. You know it's the same thing for a priesthood. And but I think I do get where you're coming from, because I remember like talking to someone about how not a seminary or a priest, but just someone like a lay woman, I think, who said or just thought like you know, why is it like, you know, if you get married, you know, it's such a like crazy like difficult process, you know, to like you know, get annulment and everything, but then like you see priests who like get ordained and then they like leave the priesthood and they can go. It's just, that's actually kind of a good point, you know, like because it is like it's there's so much but anyway,
I think to I guess play the opposite opposition of that would be you definitely don't want somebody being in the priesthood who isn't fit for priesthood.
Correct.
So I think that would be okay. You feel like you're not meant to be here, then we'll obviously, in the sense, give you that release. We'll release you of your obligations, and to some extent. But where marriage, where it's just like if you're coming with like the intent of like like you say, like it is an actual like scam from the beginning, you know, that it's not valid because of deception from the beginning,
right?
That's fine. But if you want an annulment simply because you guys are two different people from when you got married, that's not a valid enough reason. Whereas just like a lot of like, you know, for example, maybe not, well, hopefully not in the Catholic Church, but you see a lot of it where people get married because they're out of wedlock, or because, you know, it's just they're stuck on the feeling of what they think love is and what love actually is not. Whereas just like, I think there's this misconception where people mistake love as a feeling when love is a choice.
Correct.
You know, so it's just like, I think of it like in that sense, where it's just like, the parameters of you getting out of marriage should be a lot more serious, because if it's just because you guys fight a lot, or you guys just don't,
Yeah.
agree on values or something like that, or how you want to raise your children, that's not a valid enough excuse, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's true. Actually, I mean, it's according to the church and how it processes moments and things, and so, but just like back to, I guess.
So yeah,
my
sorry.
discernment. You're good.
So let's circle way back to this conversation. So obviously you handed him the piece of paper, and you had this really good conversation.
Yeah, and Oh, go ahead.
How long was the conversation?
Oh, what you mean, like the rector? You mean
you and because you
Father
talked
Marco,
to the rector.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so Father Marco, who
Yeah.
is the one that he said he was proud of you for not filling it out.
How
long was that conversation?
That's a good question. At least an hour. It's probably an hour.
So did they? And so like was scheduling like hour incrementals, or was like no, like they anticipated these to be long talks?
Oh no, I mean it was just not not every guy in my class had to meet with him.
Okay,
it was just I scheduled like the day before. I was like, I gotta talk to him, because I wasn't gonna turn the petition. I was the only guy in my class I could tell that was not gonna turn the petition, and so I was like, I just wanted to like talk to him just to have that.
Let him know where you're at.
Yeah, exactly. And so
that's what I'm struggling with.
Right.
This isn't. I'm not being called to do this.
Right. And so I met with him. I was able to get a point with the last, the last work hour of the workday, 4 p.m. And so we talked till 5, and it was just a really good, conversation, and like of just, he told me like, as the rector, my job is not to make all you guys become priests, like my job is to help you discern, God's will for your life. And what's important is not that, like, like you're called to be a priest and you make that decision to be like, what's important is that you receive a calling from the Lord and you respond generously to that call, whatever that is. So like for the time, like for me, it was like God was calling me to the priesthood. I respond like in that moment, right? I'm responding with generosity, to give myself to this calling, to this vocation. But if God were to like intervene or I should say, if God were to say
carry his will out.
Yeah, carry his will out. And well, if God were to say, actually,
just kidding.
I want you to, just kidding. Oh, yeah, actually, I want you to, go this other direction. Then that's what we're, called to do. It's like, for me, the perfect image of, discernment for us is the story of like Abraham and Isaac, right? How like Abraham, he's called by God to like offer to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, and so they walk up the mountain, and so Abraham like obeys. He like he has faith, and he obeys God's command to sacrifice his son, and in his heart he chooses that. He's like, I'm gonna do this because God told me to. And so, but they go up the mountain. He's about to sacrifice his son, but God actually in the last moment says, actually no, like Abraham, the angel says like, actually, God is providing the sacrifice, and it ends up being the ram that he sacrifices instead. And so I think often that's how discernment is for us, where God will lead us in a direction, and when we see him leading us in that direction, we commit to it, and we pour our hearts into it and with generosity, like Abraham did. Like he was committed to sacrificing his son. He wasn't like wishy-washying it, But at the end of the day, it's with this trust and knowledge that like God is, he's the author of our lives, and it's his will. He's the one writing our story, and so
he is as loving as he is just.
Right. Yeah. And just like he's the one writing our story. So if there's a huge like plot twist, so to speak, like, we are to obey that. And that's kind of felt like for me, it's like, I really did feel called to the priesthood.
Yeah.
But then I knew like, so here's the thing. And I don't know how much but I'll try to like.
Well, I mean, we can talk all night.
Okay,
we
yeah,
can
I
talk
know.
all night, you know.
Yeah, but I know we can. So and yeah, I'm totally down
as
for
long
that.
as it takes. As long as it takes.
So about the discernment of me to withdraw was the identity thing, right? Of like beloved son of first beloved son of the Father, and then you take on the identity of whatever it is, like the priesthood or a married man or whatnot. And so that's why I withdrew. And it was just really. There's so much peace that came from it, but it was hard. It was like the most difficult decision of my life. I remember again, because for these 4 years of my life, or in the seminary, but then before that, in that discernment program, for 7 years, I was actively, discerning
so much into it.
The priest, exactly, yeah,
and for it to just in a 10-minute speech, it's all it's all essentially stripped away.
Yeah, and it was
because I would assume in that moment you knew after those 10 minutes, 7 years gone in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's there was definitely that kind of thought of man, I've invested so much into this, but
and there's almost that I gotta finish this.
Oh, exactly. That was part of the pressure. Of I'm all the way basically to the finish line, and
you're just gonna exit the race.
Yeah.
No, but realistically, that makes sense. Where it's just I don't want to say stubbornness, but there's almost that grit into wanting to finish, the race, wanting
totally.
No, I still want, even though I wasn't called, but then it's just how ingenuine that is, and say you went through with it, and then you start to build this resentment.
Right.
For the church, and you build this resentment for the Lord, which is not obviously what is the intention of what priesthood should be. So it's just it's I think it's a noble thing to say I'm entering the seminary, but it's I think an equally a noble thing to say this isn't for me.
Correct.
And especially to be there while they give you the application to say, hey, this is the final step before you're
right.
You're being ordained.
Getting ordained, yeah.
So you're in the final steps. You're in the final year?
Yes, yeah.
So it's just you're in the final year, and it's just in this final year, I would assume is just the prepping you and
basically, yeah. It's basically just you're already a deacon.
And
it's
rounding
just
out the edges.
Yeah, exactly. Just learning how to celebrate mass and whatnot. So yeah, so my classmates in the seminary, they were ordained deacons, May of 2023, and then this past June, just a few months ago. They were ordained, yeah.
Did you stay in the seminary to watch them be ordained?
Oh yeah, so I stayed in the seminary until the end of that school year. So I stayed. So even though I made the decision in March, April of that year, I the rector knew, but he was very gracious to let me stay until the end of the school year. And so basically I stayed till June, and then June, my classmates got ordained. But they get ordained at the ordination happens at the cathedral. So and then I attended my classmates' ordination at the cathedral just back in June of this year. Cool. So that was really. But what's awesome is God is just very good in that there was no resentment or any of that because there is a sense of oh man, it'd be awesome to be up there with my classmates and be ordained with them.
Yeah, because there's almost I bet this feeling of being left out.
Yeah, no, sure.
And in that sense, it's almost a double-edged sword. Does that make sense? Whereas
I think so. Yeah.
Where you were probably feeling that sense of dang, I wish I could have been up there.
Yes.
But if you were on the opposite side of that, it'd be you probably in the moment, if you continued on, what did I just do? Where it's just you're going through that almost this crisis, I don't want to say that, but but going through this, reality check of what reality was in that moment, where it's just God was no, you're not just fundamentally a priest. You're my son.
Yes.
And you're my son before you're a priest.
Yes.
So it's just if this is part of the Father's will to get you to heaven.
Yeah, exactly.
Then, it's just because we don't need not saying you would have been a bad priest, but we don't need we don't need another bad priest, you know.
Yeah, we need. I think the most important thing is holiness, right? Like that primary vocation to holiness is so important. In fact, I want to. Can I share a verse?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you. So I remember it was like in May of 2023 when I announced officially, like even though the rector knew and everything, but that's when I announced it to like the whole community of the seminary that
nobody knew.
I shouldn't say nobody, like my close friends knew, my family knew, you know, like people I communicated, like my close people who were close to me knew about my discernment and stuff, like, you know, very soon after I made the decision to delay ordination and leave seminary. Yeah. But like the people who had to knew, but like as far as like the public announcement at the seminary, like that didn't occur until May of I
would assume right before the
early May, like maybe like a month before the school year ended and the ordination occurred,
Oh, okay.
But yeah, my classmates, they all knew though that I wasn't. Yeah. They all knew. But when I made that announcement, it was in our chapel after morning prayer, and I remember thinking, like, the night before or that morning, like, I feel like I want to share something, like I want to say a little something just to as a kind of a witness, you know, to how God has been working in my life, you know, like really brief, you know, but like share something, you know, that when I'm you know, saying goodbye to the community.
Absolutely.
And I opened up my, I don't know if it was that or I opened up my iBreviary app on my phone, but it was like the gospel of that day was this gospel which I'm about to read. It's when Jesus, well, I'll just read it. So let's see. Okay. Philip said to him, so this is John chapter 14, and which is funny because last time I was talking about how John chapter 15 was like my favorite passage. This is John chapter 14, verse 8. Let's start there. Philip said to him, "Lord, show us the Father, and we shall be satisfied." Jesus said to him, "Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry. I'm going with Philip. It's Thomas that I'm looking for here. Sorry. So it's
this just came up too in the
gospel.
Yeah,
okay.
For the reading. That's insane.
Yeah. So Thomas said to him, "Lord, we do not know where you are going. How can we know the way?" Jesus said to him, "I am the way and the truth and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me." So that verse, that's John chapter 14, verse 5 and 6. You know, Jesus, "I am the way." And so when I read that, I was like, man, this is what I have to share. I was like inspired. I was like, and so I go up there, and like it's the kind of thing at the seminary when they announce, like, okay, so and so, you know, has an announcement to make for us. Whenever they say that, like, basically, like, you know, like, oh shoot, this seminarian's gonna say like he's leaving, you know, he's turning out. And so like they announced that, like, okay, you know, Joseph Morrell has like a few words to say, you know. And so I just shared how, like, you know, after the spiel that like the kind of the default what you say is after, you know, "Greetings, brothers, after consulting with my spiritual director and after serious discernment and prayer, I've decided to withdraw, you know, from the seminary." And, you know, I led with this, and I was like, well, you know, in today's gospel, so it's like, I was like saying a homily, you know, it's like in today's gospel, you know, Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." He doesn't say the priesthood is the way, marriage is the way, religious life is the way. No, he says, "I am the way." And so for me, it was like, I came to a point in my life where I made priesthood the way. For me, the priesthood was like my, kind of an extreme to say this, but yeah, kind of like my salvation. It was my identity. It was like who I was, the priesthood. But Jesus is trying to show me, like, no, actually, I am the way. And it's like by following him, by following Jesus, that just naturally, organically, our secondary vocation, our state of life vocation will unfold, you know, whether that's priesthood or married life, you know, but it's first we follow him, you know, and it's just crazy to think because obviously priesthood is such a noble thing, but even priesthood being a noble thing, it's still something that we can like get attached to. It's still something that we can focus in on, rather than focusing on the author of vocation and himself. And so that was just like a huge also a huge realization.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's funny how you say like when somebody goes up and talks, like they're leaving the seminary. Were there any seminarians, at least at like the LA like seminary, where it's just like they were just gone overnight and there were no no final words?
Oh,
like,
man.
It's just like they go to their like spiritual director and like, hey, I'm out, I can't do it.
Oh
like,
man, that's a good question.
Any cases in that?
Yeah, I can't say too much, but
that's what I would do. I'm not gonna lie. I would be like,
so
I can't do this.
So that does happen. That is not recommended, or it doesn't happen often at all. But like,
it does happen.
It's happened. What I'll say is it's happened before, where it's overnight. A guy will
just yes or no. Did you experience somebody in the seminary doing that?
Like, I've witnessed. I've witnessed that before.
But you've been in the seminary while it's happened.
I have, yes, but I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna go into any more detail.
No, obviously, no, because at the end of the day, like that is a. I'm not gonna tell you. Not like, well, what was his name? Where did he go? Because like obviously like leaving. I can see how like leaving the seminary can be a humbling experience, but also like having this like shame and like embarrassment.
Yeah, totally.
And I like it can be. I feel like it can be even more so if you feel the need to just upright and just leave. Like
I mean it can be extraordinarily humbling and that's the thing. Like for me, it was very healing because I had this conviction, right, that this was from the Lord. This calling to leave was from the Lord, and so because I had that conviction, I was not ashamed of it. I was like, I was this is how the Lord is working. Like He says, I am the way, and so I'm just following Him, and where He's leading me is out of seminary now, and I think for me, like before I made the decision, I was wrestling with that fear, right?
Yeah.
Of what are people going to think, what are people going to say, and of course, like it's tough, it's tough because not everyone understands that, I think, how would I put this? Like, I think leaving seminary is like most Catholics, I think there's just a lot of hype. I don't know if that's the right word, but there's a lot of hype around like young men becoming priests, and so when you see that, it's like everyone gets excited, especially like the old ladies at the viejitas, like at the church, right? Like they're so excited. They're just see a young face, a young man like becoming a priest. They're like, oh my gosh,
No, I get that.
And so there definitely is that pressure. And so when you leave, it's like
you come back.
You fear like, oh, all these people are gonna be disappointed and be like, oh, and there is that. There definitely is. Like I definitely witnessed that and experienced that.
Yourself?
Myself, yeah. Whether that was in my family or like in and even my classmates, were kind of like they were very supportive of me in my discernment. But yeah, there's a sorrow there.
No, of course. There's a heartbreak to it. For sure.
Yes.
Like because it's just
like
you guys are like you're all collectively on this journey to priesthood and how it is where it's just like Jesus says it, it's just like, many will be called, but only few will be chosen.
Yes.
And that goes for that can be applied to a plethora of things within our faith where it's just like to priesthood, vocation of marriage, even with just Christianity and the faith in general, where it's just like where there is that's like you say, like that sorrow where it's just like, man, like, I wish he was getting ordained with us, and like, it's almost as if like, I'm sure, those who do leave the seminary and those who get like ordained, like there's almost as if like, man, like one of our brothers is missing,
right.
And I can see how that is because like, if you think of like a friend group and like somebody doesn't show up to, a very important birthday party or a very important gathering where it's just like, there's something missing, and that missing is just the sole I guess, physicality of what you would bring
Sure.
into that moment, you know?
Yeah, especially after people expect you to be there.
Yeah.
You know? Like so many people like expected,
Absolutely.
you know, me to, you know, be ordained and, you know, like have my first mass at my home parish or whatever. And it's just like, but then all of a sudden, like that's, you know, taken away. And, but I think, but that's good, you know, that you know, because this is what God called me. And I think Catholics need to see and understand that is totally legitimate. It's legitimate for the Lord to call someone
Into the priesthood,
like into this path of going to the seminary and preparing for priesthood, but also call him out of it. And same thing with someone who goes to religious life, or like a sister, or a woman who enters a religious community. Like it's totally legitimate that the Lord could call them in that direction, and then you know, take them out because you know the Lord. There's a reason for that. There's a reason the Lord does that. It's not. I remember like being frustrated. And even today, I can it can still resurface, but just like frustration with like, it's like, Lord, like are you like deceiving me or something? Is there some kind of like, what was this game? You know, like with Abraham, right? It's like, well, you told me, you know, to sacrifice my son, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, I'm not supposed to do that. It's like there can be that, but then the Lord kind of, he reveals like the.
See, when you talk about like, you know, Lord, did you see me in that way? Like that's almost as if like, well, that sounds like, you know, the evil one's trying to creep in and create that
exactly
separation from the Lord.
Exactly,
yeah. It's just like, I remember there was like a couple months ago where it's just like, you know, the Lord was telling me to clearly do something, and I was just like, Lord, I know you're setting me up for failure, and I know this because we've had this conversation and we went back and forth on it, and it is just not going to go the way I want it to go. You know,
right.
And maybe I'm speaking it into like, you know, maybe I'm speaking it into existence, and you know, I'm allowing you to just and now allow me to be denied in this sense, you know, of what I'm trying to accomplish, and that's okay because I know it's only going to drive me closer to you, you know, and that's the big emphasis in it, where it's just like when things don't go right, you know, now, where it's just like I'm kind of in the sense where it's just like I need to allow this to draw me closer to God and not pull away. You know, and so it's just like, and so like, and sometimes I think like it's loud and clear, where God just saying, yeah, go, you got to go do this, whether you want to or not, you know. But I think like you say, like, you know, he calls people to the religious life, and he just wants us to just say yes in that moment, and fully give him our absolute. Yes, no restrictions, no what ifs, no buts.
Correct, yeah.
You know, ands, ifs, or buts. You know, it's just like nothing. Where it's just like, and maybe that, you know, it's just like where he just puts us into these seasons. You know.
Yes, that's a good word.
Like
seasons. Yeah.
Your seminary life was just a season of your life, and who's to say, like, you know, you don't revisit it down the road. You know, and not saying I know what you're saying. You know, I know. You know. You know, now, obviously, it's a no. You know?
Right, and what I would say to that is, what's interesting is like when there was something you said that I wanted to touch on, but anyway, what
I say a lot.
Yeah, no, it was because it was really good what you said. But about like it was interesting because at the time, when I left seminary, I thought like, you know, probably. I don't know. There was this because you know that like all the reasons like I spelled out for like leaving seminary were not like oh, I know God, like this is not for me, like God's not calling me to this. It was more again, it was like the freedom issue, it was the identity issue, and so it was interesting. I kind of saw myself like going back. That's not the case anymore, and I can explain that in a bit. But like I kind of saw myself doing that. But like. Because what happened was, let's see, I left, and then basically this past year, so yeah, that was like June of 2023, leaving seminary, and then this past year I was a teacher. I was a Catholic school teacher, so I was a teacher at a Catholic school in Los Angeles. I taught middle school social studies and religion. It was so hard. It was like so incredibly. Teaching middle school is like very hard. You know, it's
did the diocese set you up with that job, or
good question. No, it was like not in this official capacity. It was like one of my classmates in seminary, who like basically is friends with a priest, pastor at this parish.
Oh, okay.
And he heard that like, hey, he's looking for a new religion teacher, middle school teacher at his school, and that's kind of what I was looking for. I actually kind of felt like the Lord it put that on my heart as I was leaving seminary, like that I was supposed to teach and stay in Los Angeles to teach at a Catholic school. And so I did that, and it was good. I found that I like love teaching, but just being a middle school teacher is just not like for me. Like I can't see myself doing that like long term as a career. But
no, absolutely.
But it was definitely where the Lord put me. Like it was like where I was supposed to be to grow in the ways that I had to grow.
He was putting you with kids. Like, you sure you want that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Well, sure you want that?
Well, what I'll say is like, yeah. I mean, so I just want to speak into a little bit about like, because I think this is important about how like now I'm actually actively like discerning marriage. I'm dating someone right now actually, and I just want to speak into how kind of I discern into that, which is that I like this past year because priesthood was kind of hovering like in the background for me.
Yeah.
As a possibility, it was like it seemed unfair for me to like enter into a relationship
so immediately.
So immediately after leaving seminary, but also just like if the priesthood was still kind of hovering in the background for me as like a possibility, if I were to date like it just seemed unfair. It would seem unfair to the person to the woman, because it would be like, well, how can I like freely like discern marriage with this person if I'm still kind of like looking over my shoulder toward the priesthood, And so as a possibility of like going back. And then, like the images, like I hadn't shut the door yet, like on the priesthood.
Yeah.
And so, but what had to happen was like and this goes back to like that really good question you asked, when I entered seminary, which was like, was there these other kind of subconscious motivations and whatnot? And so, basically, like the Lord revealed in my heart that basically there were these kind of impure motivations behind like wanting to be a priest, which didn't characterize like why I entered the seminary, but just like there were these impure motivations, and it was like I was attached to like the security that the priesthood the security of, meaning like when you're a priest, it's like you don't have to worry about like a career, figuring out like providing for your spouse and family, like you just there's like all these perks, so to speak, right? There's those
free
things.
House.
Yeah, exactly. You have a place.
Yeah, no, there's no rent.
Right. Yeah, you're taken care of, so to speak. And that's not why like you entered. That's not why I entered the seminary. But at the same time, like my heart did kind of get attached to these things, and so I the Lord showed that to me in my heart that I was attached to these things, and one thing I would say is like, glory, honor, respect, like, because that's those are things that I think like, this is Catholic Men's Fellowship, right? But it's like, those are things that I would say like men, I guess, like desire to some extent or another.
Absolutely.
Glory, honor, respect, and I felt like, and there's a reason why God gave us that instinct to pursue those things.
Yeah.
It's supposed to serve the mission of like of laying down our life for the ones that we love, but the problem is like when we take those things and we like isolate them, and it's like we want to pursue them for their own sake, glory, honor, respect, to serve our own like ego, basically. And so the Lord revealed to me in my heart that I saw the priesthood as the avenue to that. Like if I became a priest, I would attain that like glory, honor, respect, because like priesthood is kind of like this big public thing, and people like admire that. People are like, oh, whoa, like you're a priest, people respect you. Yeah. It's like I don't even need to like.
There's an admiration that people just automatically give.
Exactly.
As that
without any work, like if I'm wearing the collar among like faithful Catholics, it's like instantly there's like that respect, and you have that authority. It's the easiest. What I'll say about like being a priest and like religious, it's the easiest way to like have the appearance of virtue without actually having it. Mm-hmm. Having the appearance of virtue without actually having the virtue. So like, which can be very dangerous. Like where you can have the collar on, you can like go out preach an amazing homily, like a good homily, even a good homily that's like faithful to the teaching of the church, that inspires people. You celebrate the mass reverently, like interact with people. So like you can do all that like good stuff, right? But at the end of the day, it's like you go back to your room in the rectory and I mean, no one's there. Like no one's there holding you accountable for anything. Like you go back, and I'm not saying that I'm not trying to.
I get what you're saying.
I'm not pointing fingers at anyone or suspecting anything,
yeah.
but I'm just saying there's that, and I experienced that temptation, like as a seminarian, and foresaw this going to the priesthood. It's like, well, it's so easy to put on that like great show, and then
but not do the work.
But then go back and kind of in your own heart, maybe not be all in for the Lord or all in for the, for giving your life to the vocation.
I 100%. I can see that, where it's just like you falling into the routine, and I think that's what it can easily come back to, because where nobody does hold you accountable. But it's just like that's why it's the whole, when you look at the priesthood, where it's just like all men who become priests know they should want to be a priest for that specific reason of knowing that they're going to be able to hold themselves accountable in those moments where you're within your room by yourself, having to seek the Lord and letting the Lord, because like when you join the priesthood or even religious life, you are essentially saying, I will never be cut off from you.
Sure.
Father, and that's one, and again, and it's not to bash any of our Protestant brothers or sisters, but that's one of the biggest issues I have with the Protestant church, where it's just like these leaders, these pastors in the Protestant church, where it's just like they can go home and turn the Lord off if they so desire.
Right. So
a priest can do that too, but I feel like it is almost less likelier to do that.
Yeah, I would say as a priest, there's no clocking in and clocking out.
Yeah.
You're always a priest, and you're always
you get that call at 3 a.m. for the last rites. You're going.
Yeah, exactly. There's that constant call to give of yourself to the vocation. And just a quick note on what you said about Protestant brothers and sisters. I think that's why have you watched the series The Chosen? Have you seen that?
I've seen it. Yeah.
Okay, so
what are your really quickly? We can.
Yeah. No, totally. As long as there's time, I'm totally down.
We'll wrap up on it. But what are your thoughts? So more or less on The Chosen.
I've only seen up to season 3, so I haven't seen this 4th season. I'm still yet to see the 4th season.
Okay.
I really like it. I think it's an excellent show overall. I think it's very good.
Yeah.
I don't think it was a perfect series, right? I think the other day we were talking about how we think Breaking Bad is the greatest show of all time.
We were, yeah.
I think it's awesome. I think I could do a whole podcast on that show and how I think it's actually really
the best
meaningful show, whatever.
Yeah.
But so is The Chosen on that level of cinematic masterpiece or whatever? No, it's not that, but it's nonetheless it's a really well done series, I think, and which I found there's certain scenes in that show that are so powerful to me,
Absolutely.
And it's so good. The reason why I brought that up though is because I think that's the one thing that the series does not, I think, capture it could do better at, is capturing that kind of that sense that the apostles, they gave up everything, to follow Jesus, and I heard that in the 4th season they kind of you kind of see that a little bit more, but anyway, but from what I've seen, it's there's Thomas, right, who's he's falling in love with this girl and is flirting with her, and it's just I don't know, it doesn't.
I can see where that creates that issue, 100%. I think where because that's where when I first started watching it, I was like, okay, maybe not too entirely biblically accurate.
Sure.
But then we've watched it in our young adult ministry, and what I say to that is how I would describe it, where it's just look, there's no account for some of the things in this show. And I was just however, I was just we can't fully discredit it either, because we don't know. We don't know the full circumstances of what fully happened in the ministry. It's just and the perfect example is where it's just look, we know St. Peter had a wife.
Correct. Yeah.
They talk about his mother-in-law. So the fact that it's just like, so there is the possibility that the other apostles may have been in relationships, or at some point, had a wife or a girlfriend or something like that, but there's just no account of it. And I think like the perfect way is how St. John writes, where it's just like, not everything about Jesus was recorded, because the world cannot contain those
the books. Yeah.
So it's just like, I think that's kind of the way, in a way, like I describe it, where it's just like, we can't say that's 100% true, but we also can't fully discredit it because we don't ultimately know.
And I think oh, sorry, go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
Well, I'll wrap up on the sense. It's just like, that's kind of like where there is that open-endedness in the Gospels, where only so much is recorded,
Right, and I think the point of the series is not necessarily to like give the most accurate portrayal of what actually happened, but I think what the series exists for is to
bring people closer.
Bring people closer to the Lord, through like kind of really demonstrating like the meaning, like the core, like the meaning of the gospel, right? So. Like my favorite scene in the whole, I would say, well, one of mine, but perhaps my favorite scene in the whole series is when like, when our Lord is talking to like, James the Less, little James is called in the series, right? And he's like, and St. James is telling our Lord like, you're healing all these other people, like why aren't you healing me? And it's just like, whoa, like that's so like human and just so relatable, because we've all like, I'm sure we've all felt that, where we like look at like how God is working on everyone else's lives, and we look at ourselves, we're like, where like what about me, God, and like and so anyway, it's like that's not like recorded in the Bible, but that scene speaks to just such a profound truth of just how the Lord works in our lives. And the reason, like he and Jesus like gives an answer to it, which is like, I feel like I'll butcher it, but something to the effect of like, basically, like how much will you inspire, through your witness, to show that like, even in your suffering, you still remain faithful. Like you still trust God. You trust in like the hope of heaven, basically,
and the whole like doing it with this disability,
yes,
and that you'll be fully restored in heaven.
Correct.
Where it's just like, it's a beautiful scene. I also later that's in the third season, the final scene in season 3 where it's Peter walking on the water. And like the conversation that like they're having back and forth, I feel like is just also very real, where it's just like, like if it is you, like, then permit me to walk in the water, and Jesus like is like, you have the faith and like to walk, and he's like, yeah, and then Jesus responds, it's like, then why are you upset? Like, and it's just like and I feel like I've been in those moments where it's just like God is answering like all these like questions. And it's just like, and I've been paid given that question like in my heart, where it's just like, why am I upset? Like, why am I upset? Like, then why am I so angry? And it's just like, and I just feel like it's just like just that real, like just response and just like reaction, where, it's just, it does a really good way in like obviously bringing the words to life, and bringing, the gospel to its core fundamentally, down. I mean, they do in season 4. They do really, really well. Where, in my opinion, they kind of start to really round out, I guess, those sharper edges. Where I think they take the complete turn and like embrace the Catholicism side of the show.
I see. Okay, yeah, so I'm curious. Don't spoil it for me, I'm
absolutely.
curious. Yeah,
no, absolutely not. But it's just like, overall, I like this show. But to circle back, kind of like the priesthood, and wrap it up here.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to men who are discerning the priesthood?
Yeah.
Seriously thinking about the seminary.
That's a good question. I would say, like, you need to kind of like what I was sharing about my story. You need to like first recognize your identity as like a beloved son of the Father, and make holiness your priority first and foremost, like following Jesus, intimacy with Christ, like that is like the first goal. Because our initial goal is our first goal is to get to heaven, That's more important than anything. And like, I think it's important for us to recognize, like, not all the saints, like canonized saints who we know are in heaven, like not all of them had a state of life vocation, meaning like religious or priest. Look at like the recent beatified Carlo Acutis, right?
Yeah. Carlo.
Yes, who was so young when he passed, right? He was not like a priest or anything, but or married, and yet he's a saint in heaven, and and there's like many others as well whom we could point to, and it's just like, because what makes you a saint is not that state of life vocation, but it's just you following the Lord, and I think that's important first and foremost. And so what I would say is always like keep that at the forefront. Never be in a moment where you're like on the conveyor belt in discernment, like always like, ask the question, okay, if God were to ask me to like switch, would I be, like would I be free to do so, or would I be, crippled by fear? I think priesthood is a noble vocation, but I think we also need to recognize that marriage is also a very noble vocation, and that's I'll just really briefly say this, that I, because of like my attachment to priesthood, because I thought it would give me the glory, honor, respect, and whatnot, it was like I would look at marriage and kind of I don't know, it was just I had this fear like about marriage because I saw it as like being like more difficult and like kind of more restrictive, because it's like, it's you gotta like provide, for your family, whatnot, and like you're bound by your family, you don't have this like independence or whatever. But
wouldn't you equally have that in the priesthood as well, though?
Of what,
like would you say like you don't have all these like commitments?
There's like restrictions in the priesthood too as well. Yeah, correct. And so
it's give and take.
Yeah, I mean, how would I put this? I don't want to say pros and cons because I don't want to make it sound like superficial like that. But there's like,
but ultimately, like there are, because there are the natural wants of human, of man.
Yeah,
because only man could be priests, and that's how it should be.
Right. Right. But. So what I would say is, like, I had my own fears, right? Like some people have fears like toward the priesthood and it being restrictive or whatever. But for me, it was like marriage, and. But I had to die to myself, to my ego, that wanted the priesthood for glory, honor, respect, so that my heart could be open to something that's like ordinary, marriage, right? Which is like ordinary. It's the most common, vocation, but it's still heroic and it's still noble, and it was like, whoa, like realizing that was just so profound, and to see how like, I think this is a good point to like end off with, because it's the Men's Fellowship podcast, which is like that, to be a man is not to just, it's not to like to be masculine, to really be a man. It's not just to like attain that glory, honor, respect, but it's to like lay down your life, for, your beloved, for like your spouse. And so, and the fruit that comes from that. So like your children. Mm-hmm. So for like the married man, it's like lay down your life for your spouse and your kids, and for the priest, it's to lay down your life like for the church, and that is like what, like, as long as the man has that virtue, you could say that he is a true man, like Saint Joseph, right? Like Saint Joseph, he's like an amazing model for what it means to be a man, because he is not like this figure whom we know like did all these like crazy, glorious, like awesome, spectacular things. No, like all he did was he just loved his spouse, Mary. He loved Jesus, and he just did that really well in this humble, quiet, ordinary way. And that's what made him like the greatest man who ever lived, aside from our Lord and St. John the Baptist. So like he's just, that's what we all need to recognize, of like yes, like priesthood, especially into like it's easy for us to look at priesthood and think like, oh, that's so awesome. Like that's, where the saints are or whatever. And then marriage, kind of look upon marriage as like, because I know I definitely had this, like a spiritual pride because I felt called to the priesthood, right? Of like, marriage is just kind of, it's ordinary or whatever. But no, it's like, it is a heroic vocation. It's noble. And like, we shouldn't treat it other than that. And so I think it's so important that we discern properly, meaning like we see the goodness of marriage, we see the goodness of religious life, we see the goodness of priesthood. We don't see like priesthood as like super like superior to marriage, and no, marriage is just like for the plebes or whatever. Like that's a wrong way to look at it. To properly discern is like to see the goodness and nobility of all of them, and then you just allow God to lead you to which one. So, but yeah, to be a man is to have that virtue to lay down your life. So once I realized that, it was like I don't need to stress as much about like how much money I make, how successful I am, how like accolades I have. It's just like, can I do that? What can I love well? Like if I were to get married, can I love my spouse? Well, obviously that as a byproduct, it's going to come with like wanting to provide and protect, right? But it's like, as long as I can love well, I know I can like be a good man, And so that's, anyway, I wanted to say that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's, like you say, that's the important part, is the discernment, is seeing all the goodness and all across the board.
Yes.
So it's just like, but thank you for sharing all of that. I mean, obviously, like, I'm sure it's not, I don't want to say necessarily not easy to share, but obviously, it's just like, I'm sure it can bring up, those past feelings of, reliving those.
Yeah, I mean, it can, but also just like, I would say I'm very much at peace with where I'm at. And like, I'm grateful, to God for my journey, and it's difficult, right? But when you look back on kind of like your life, you see like, wow, like it makes sense. There's a reason for, like what does our Lord say? I think was it this past Sunday or the Sunday before, that the gospel was like, he would be my disciple, must deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. So it's like, we should expect that. We shouldn't be surprised when it's like,
realizing, this
cross, why do I have this cross, Lord? I didn't ask for this, but it's like actually, yeah. I mean, that's part of what it means to be a disciple.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's part of it is like realizing that when you get to these key moments within our lives where it's like, dang, like every moment led to this, and it's just like, and having no idea that this is where it was all leading, and that this is just one moment until the next one. In this walk, in this faith of God. But I think, anything else you want to share before we finish up here?
No, I think that's it. Just, pursue holiness and,
first and foremost,
and just everything else will follow. It's vocation is not something for us to be anxious about. It's not for something for us
that's
a
really good way to put it, especially as like young adults, where it's just like, we're all rushing like, oh, where's our spouse? Yeah,
because we think, because our idea of vocation is that like, that's the most important question. What is my vocation?
Yeah.
What is my state of life vocation? Like marriage, priesthood, if it's marriage, like spouse, whatever. Like who is it? It's and we get kind of this anxiety.
Yeah.
Over
Figure
that.
Out your relationship with the Lord first.
Exactly, and like seek first the kingdom of God, and everything else will follow. Yeah. And so I think that's just so important. It's not something. For us to be anxious. It's something we can be honest about.
Yeah.
I think that's so important in prayers, to be uncensored, honest, real with God. I mean, like, God, okay, like, I've been trying to like follow your will for so many years. Like, why?
Metaphorically under the fig tree.
Exactly. And so like, that's right. Like, don't be anxious. Just pray honestly, seek the Lord, and you will find.
Seek and you will find.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'd say we just finish off with the St. Michael's prayer, and
that sounds good. Yeah.
All right. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen. Yeah. St. Michael, the Archangel,
defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, cast to hell Satan and all evil spirits, proud the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen.
Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Well, thank you again for being on. Appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have you back on.
You're welcome.
Honestly,
I would love to. Honestly, I'm surprised how much like I don't know. I enjoy it, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you have a background in it, you know, and so obviously I do it. We got to get Gene back on as well. Maybe we can do one.
Maybe we can do one with all of us.
Yeah,
on
that'd
it,
be really cool. We have
cool.
we have the tools to do it. So
yeah.
but thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys stayed till the end. Like I said, check out part 1. Subscribe, hit the like button, hit the bell notification, stay up to date whenever we post on here, and share this with someone. We appreciate it. But until next time, God bless.
All right. God bless. All right. Thank you, Adam.